I've always been a bit different from other kids. I was always more interested in books and computers than sports or video games. I was also a bit of a loner. I didn't have many friends, and I preferred to spend my time alone. One day, when I was about 10 years old, I was playing in the woods behind my house when I came across a strange old woman. She was sitting on a rock, and she was wearing a long, black coat and a scarf that covered her face. I was a little bit scared, but I was also curious. I walked up to the old woman and said hello. She looked up at me with her cold, empty eyes. "What do you want?" she asked. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, staring at her. "Go home," she said. "You're not welcome here." I turned and ran away. I didn't look back. I never saw the old woman again, but I never forgot her. I still think about her sometimes, and I still wonder who she was and why she was in the woods. I've always been afraid of the dark and of being alone. I'm also afraid of the unknown. I'm afraid of things that I don't understand. I'm also afraid of being forgotten. I'm afraid that one day I'll die, and no one will remember me. I know that my fears are irrational, but I can't help them. They're a part of who I am. Many years later. One night I was feeling particularly scared and alone. I had been working late, and I was exhausted. I just wanted to go home and go to bed. But when I realized that I was running out of food, I knew that I had to go to the supermarket. I walked to the supermarket, feeling the sense of foreboding growing inside of me. I knew that something bad was going to happen. When I arrived at the supermarket, it was deserted. There were no other customers in sight. I walked to the produce section and started to pick out some fruits and vegetables. As I was picking out a pineapple, I heard a noise behind me. I turned around and saw a woman standing there. She was wearing a long, black coat and a scarf that covered her face. "Hello," I said. "Is there anything I can help you with?" The woman didn't say anything. She just stared at me with her empty eyes. I felt a chill run down my spine. Is everything okay?" I asked. The woman still didn't say anything. She just turned and walked away. I watched her go, feeling uneasy. I turned back to the pineapple and picked it up. But as I did, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. It was the woman again. She was standing behind me, even closer than before. I turned around to face her. "What do you want?" I asked. The woman opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She just stared at me with her empty eyes. I took a step back. "Please," I said. "Leave me alone." The woman didn't move. She just kept staring at me. I turned and ran. I ran through the produce section, past the checkout aisles, and out of the supermarket. I didn't stop running until I reached my apartment building. I ran inside and locked the door behind me. I leaned against the door, panting. I didn't know what to do. I looked out the window and saw the supermarket across the street. The woman was standing in the window, staring at me. I shivered and turned away from the window. I didn't know what was going on. I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the woman's face in my mind. The next day, I woke up feeling exhausted. I went to work, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about the woman. I decided to leave work early and go to the police station. I told the police officer what had happened, but he didn't believe me. He said that there was no woman matching the description I gave him. He said that I was probably just tired and stressed. I left the police station feeling frustrated and alone. I didn't know what to do. I went home and tried to forget about the woman, but I couldn't. She was always in the back of my mind. I started having nightmares about her. In my nightmares, she would chase me through dark hallways and empty buildings. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding. One night, I had a particularly bad nightmare. I dreamt that the woman was in my bedroom. She was standing over my bed, and she was holding a knife. I woke up screaming. I sat up in bed, looking around. The room was empty, but I could still feel her presence. I got out of bed and went to the bathroom. I splashed some water on my face and looked in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, and my face was pale. I looked like a ghost. I went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I lay awake all night, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat. The next morning, I knew that I couldn't go on like this anymore. I had to do something about the woman. I decided to go to a therapist. I needed to talk to someone about what was happening. I found a therapist who specialized in dealing with people who had experienced supernatural phenomena. I went to my first therapy appointment and told the therapist everything that had happened. The therapist listened patiently. When I was finished, she said, "It sounds like you're experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety. I'm not sure if what you're experiencing is supernatural, but I can help you cope with the stress and anxiety." The therapist prescribed me medication and helped me develop coping mechanisms. I started seeing the therapist regularly. Over time, I started to feel better. I still think about the woman sometimes, but I'm no longer afraid of her. I know that she's not going to hurt me. I also know that she's probably just a figment of my imagination. A friend advised me to go to therapist. So I went to the therapist. I sat in the therapist's office, fidgeting with my hands. "So, you're saying that you saw a woman?" the therapist asked. "Yes," I said. "She was tall and thin, and she was wearing a long, black coat." "Did you get a good look at her face?" the therapist asked. "No," I said. "She had a scarf over her face." "Did she say anything to you?" the therapist asked. "No," I said. "She just stared at me." "How did you feel when you saw her?" the therapist asked. "I was scared," I said. "I felt like I was going to be sick." "And then what happened?" the therapist asked. "I ran," I said. "I ran out of the supermarket and ran all the way home." The therapist nodded. "I see," she said. "Well, I can't tell you for sure what you saw, but I can tell you that it's not uncommon for people to experience hallucinations when they're stressed or anxious." I took a deep breath. "So, you're saying that I'm crazy?" I asked. "I'm not saying that you're crazy," the therapist said. "I'm just saying that there could be a natural explanation for what you saw." "Okay," I said. "But what if the woman was real?" The therapist shrugged. "Even if she was real," she said, "she doesn't sound threatening. She didn't say anything to you, and she didn't try to hurt you." I thought about it for a moment. "You're right," I said. "She didn't hurt me." "So, what do you want to do now?" the therapist asked. I sighed. "I don't know," I said. "I guess I just want to feel better." The therapist smiled. "We can work on that," she said. I continued to see the therapist regularly. Over time, I started to feel better. I learned how to manage my stress and anxiety. I also learned how to cope with the uncertainty of what I had seen. I still think about the woman sometimes, but I'm no longer afraid of her. I know that she's probably just a figment of my imagination. But I'm okay with that. I'm just glad that I'm no longer living in fear.